The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast, episode number 36 to be perfectly precise. I'm your host, as always, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at joeblow.com. This is Infamous, and of course, right here at Just the Worst Podcast. And as the show title dictates, we talk wrestling week in, week out, putting things in perspective for you and breaking everything down and letting you know why it's important, why it's not important, and maybe why your perspective might be a little bit out of whack when we're talking about certain things throughout the industry. This week, going to be a busy week. WWE has a pay-per-view / special event lined up over the weekend. Extreme Rules, where basically anything goes on a match-by-match basis, sort of modeled on the ECW of old. And we're going to get into some predictions, sort of lay out the card, how it's been built, and go match by match and see if I can book this thing correctly, or at least in a sensible manner that the WWE will then probably ignore. But before we get there, there are a couple of other items that I want to touch upon before we sort of touch into Raw territory and a few other things, ultimately culminating in Extreme Rules this week. Number one, the first place that I want to start is sort of on a sad bit, and that is the circumstances surrounding Adam Rose. Now, last week when we did this show, and I released this show, immediately upon publishing it, we got the news that Adam Rose had been arrested, which was then going to bring an entire world of hurt to everything going on in his life. Adam Rose had previously been suspended under the wellness policy for 60 days because it was his second offense. And he had gone sort of public via social media, letting the people know that this was not a just suspension, I guess we could call it. That he had been suspended for use of Adderall that the company had known about for some time, and that as a result, there was no reason he should have been suspended. That even though what he was putting into his body was on the banned list, he had received medical clearance and had notified the company for him to be in the clear. So Adam Rose was dealing with some issues outside of the ring in now his personal life. And that now snowballed when Adam Rose was arrested for tampering with a witness and battery domestic assault, which are two serious offenses for anyone in the public eye to have committed, especially when you're talking about people who are known. I mean, look, it's bad enough when it's just private citizens doing these things. You know, they're going to be in deep shit as it is. But when you're part of the NFL or Major League Baseball or the WWE, the level of that offense is immediately maximized to the nth degree, because you are now a public figure and are essentially thought to know better. Adam Rose has since been indefinitely suspended by the company, who has a zero tolerance policy for anything involving domestic violence, domestic abuse. And, you know, look, I don't know the particulars of the situation. I don't know what's going to come from this. What I do know is that Adam Rose's involvement in the WWE is not important right now. Adam Rose has personal issues that need attending to and that need dealing with. He's going to need to make amends and reconcile with those around him. We already know that he is a special needs child that desperately needs his help. And also, a positive role model at home would be great. And look, I'm not going to pass judgment here on Adam Rose. This isn't the public courthouse for me to try this case. But I hope for Adam Rose's sake, once again, wrestling aside, not as a performer or a sports entertainer, but just as a human being and as a man, that he can get his shit together, he can get his family together, and everyone can sort of move forward from this in a positive manner where we don't ever hear about anything like this again, nothing like this ever occurs again, and everything is on the up and up. So, the punishment that comes with what happened is what it is. And I hope that's enough to sort of let Adam Rose know there are things very important in your life that you're going to need to take care of. And now is the moment to start doing that. With that said and out of the way, I also want to talk about Emma, who suffered an injury recently over the weekend as she was now being reintroduced to the WWE. Has now undergone back surgery, seems to be on the road to recovery, and we wish her well in that. I'm a fan of Emma. I've been a fan of Emma, sort of the goofy Emma early on in NXT, that when she transitioned up to the main show was sort of a sidekick for Santino. Never quite worked, and I'm going to get into that in just a little bit. But I'm a fan of the fact that she went back down to NXT after the shoplifting incident sort of put her deep in the doghouse, and she put in the work, and she repackaged herself and down at Full Sail got herself over as a heel that had potential. That's what you want out of a WWE superstar or wrestler, period. You want someone who, when they get knocked down, they don't complain about it. They don't bitch about it. They don't look around and wonder who screwed me. Emma put herself in a bad spot. And as a result, she had to work twice as hard to get back into a position where the company may have confidence in her. And because of that, it's heartbreaking to hear that Emma is now on the shelf and is now suffering another setback, having worked hard to get herself in a position to overcome the first one. And I hope when Emma comes back, she's able to sort of slot right back in and continue to build a heel persona on the main roster that will be an asset to the women's division. Now, I want to talk about the NXT talent in just a moment. I'm going to first talk about what's going on in NXT right now, and then I want to sort of get on my soapbox about NXT superstars being transitioned up to the main roster. Right now in NXT, there's some cool stuff going on. There's always some cool stuff going on. But in seeing a lot of the talent get called up following WrestleMania, in seeing the women's division sort of gutted last year, NXT is working the developmental that it was built upon. They are constantly finding new talent to fill the void left by old talent who's being promoted up to the main roster. And they're in a very interesting position right now to once again continue building talent. while using some of the more popular names who they've been brought in to sort of stabilize the company, the brand. Guys like Shinsuke Nakamura and Austin Aries and Bobby Roode. While at the same time developing Chad Gable and Jason Jordan, or The Revival, or The Drifter. Right now in the main event picture, they're doing something very cool and very simple. And it's something that this is what the WWE should be looking at. Because right now you have Samoa Joe, the recently crowned NXT champion, getting set to defend his NXT title against the former champion, Finn Balor. Now, there will be an NXT TakeOver special. It will be happening in mid-June. And the main event for that has been set as a steel cage match. The first steel cage match in NXT history between Samoa Joe and Finn Balor for the title. Now, this could be Finn Balor's last stop in NXT. But this is definitely the blow-off to the feud between Samoa Joe and Finn Balor. A feud that has been going on for months, that has been carefully booked along the way, that has, for the most part, been straight up. Whether it was at NXT TakeOver London, whether it was at NXT TakeOver Dallas, this has been straight up. And the culmination of this feud, which has gotten heated more and more, and has been relayed to the fan base using social media in a very well thought out and smart way, this is the culmination of the feud. A steel cage match. This is a gimmick match to settle the score, as gimmick matches should be used. The way that NXT operates is that they don't rely on extra bells and whistles to be the reason a match is over. They get the match over first and then add bells and whistles to it, so that it increases the stakes of the match that's happening. They don't just say, well, October is Hell in a Cell, so let's get two guys and throw them in there for the sake of having the match on the card that the match is named after. That's not what they do. That's what the WWE does, but that's not what NXT does. NXT says, let's carefully integrate these gimmicks so that they mean something. So that we're not just trotting them out there for the pageantry. If you remember, going back quite some time, when Bo Dallas lost his title to Neville, that was in a ladder match. First ever ladder match that ever happened in NXT. And it meant something. When Bayley defended the NXT Women's Championship against Sasha Banks in a 30-minute Iron Man match at TakeOver Respect, that was a match that then meant something, because they had built the feud up so much that the only way to really blow it off was with something special. This is a situation where they have built the feud up so much that the only way to blow it off is something special. And as a result, the gimmick maintains specialness, uniqueness. It matters for something. It's not just, let's just get it out there because it'll be cool. It's let's get it out there with what's already going on because it will increase the intensity of the match that much more. The WWE has that luxury if they want to. They just choose not to use it. They don't need to use gimmicks all the time. They can have straight up one-on-one matches like they did once upon a time. But the reason they have to rely upon the extras as often as they do is because what they're doing otherwise isn't working. And so look, I'm looking forward to Finn Balor and Samoa Joe at TakeOver in a steel cage. I think it's a great way for that feud to end. And I think those two are going to do something special with it. But once again, lessons to be learned from developmental. Now, the crux of what I want to talk about for a good portion of this show has to do with NXT talent. In particular, those that have been called up to the main roster, those that are transitioning from NXT to the WWE. From the third brand to the main brand, getting called up to the show, so to speak. Because as we've seen talent brought up, they've been put in a position not to succeed, but to fail. Now, granted, there are exceptions to the rule. Kevin Owens is an exception to the rule. The Shield, exceptions to the rule. But that's about it. That's about it. That's the success rate. Even the Wyatts, who you could say, maybe kinda successful, still, after several years, haven't really found their niche. Haven't really carved out their path. There are people who still look at the gentlemen in the Wyatt family. Bray Wyatt, Luke Harper, Eric Rowan, Braun Strowman. And they say to themselves, I don't know what these guys are about. Still, years later, having difficulty figuring out who these characters are. And you look at where we're at right now, where the WWE is right now as a company, and what they call the new era. And it's really not all that new. The only thing that they're doing right now is trotting out new faces. Injecting new talent into the mix. But the problem with what they're doing right now is that the machine is still broken, very much so. So while they could call it the new era, they're still doing very much the same old shit, and it's the stuff that fans didn't like, that fans tuned out on. Why the ratings are down, why attendance isn't strong, why getting 100,000 people into AT&T Stadium in Dallas for WrestleMania was a question mark. Because as much as they want to say things are changing, they're not changing. The faces are changing, but what they're doing is not. They're just taking new talent talent that isn't broken, talent that isn't damaged, talent that they haven't ruined yet, and throwing him into a system that's going to break and ruin them. Because as much as they just want to change the face of what they're doing, the actions remain the same. And if you can't look in the mirror and say what we're doing is wrong, you just say, well, I'll just get a new face in the mirror and it'll be shiny and new and everything will be great. That doesn't solve your problems. And that's why you look at this new era and you scratch your head and say, it still feels the same. A lot. Now, you look at the talent that they're calling up and you see where it's going. You see what it's doing. You see how they're building it, how they're fostering it, how they're massaging it to be something better in the long term. And it's not working. Let's use Emma as an example because we've already brought her up earlier in the show. Emma went down to NXT and worked her ass off to become evil Emma and repackage herself as a solid heel persona. And what happens from that when she's called up to the main roster? They just throw her out there. No build, no fanfare, no explanation. Just, this is Emma. Hope you like her, don't like her. And that doesn't help Emma get over in any way as a heel. That's why when Emma in matches with Becky Lynch gets zero reaction, because nobody knows what to do with her. And now that she's been set back with an injury, you think anybody's going to miss Emma when she's gone? I mean, I will, because I dig evil Emma. But the majority of the WWE universe isn't even going to realize she's gone until she comes back and they go, oh shit, where has she been this whole time? Oh, she was hurt? That's a shame. I hope she's better. Because the WWE has been not putting forth the effort to make these talents matter as they are called up. Dana Brooke right now is another perfect example. Dana Brooke has come back up to the main roster, or has been called up to the main roster from NXT after once again building a heel persona down in NXT. Got hurt down there towards the tail end, probably hit her ceiling. Even though the women's division is in a rebuilding phase right now, outside of Bayley and Asuka, and you have people like Alexa Bliss down there, Nia Jax, still sort of finding their footing. But I don't know that there was much more for Dana Brooke to do down there that she hadn't already done. And so Dana Brooke gets called up to the main roster with very little fanfare. Nobody knows who she is. And she attacks Becky Lynch, and that's supposed to matter, even though they don't know who she is. The announcers don't even really put over who she is or how vicious this attack was. And then the following week, she's thrown into a match with Becky Lynch. And once again, nobody knows who she is. So as a result, why should they care that she's in the match? They may be cheering for Becky Lynch because they're familiar with her, because she's been around a while. They've sort of tried to piece some of the puzzle together. But one half of the equation is blank. Nobody knows who she is. Nobody knows. And as a result, what you have is a talent who isn't over. And it's a catch-22 because the company will look at the talent and say they're not over, and they lose confidence in them quickly, and they pull the plug on any sort of push or build right out of the gate, and then you're just left with dead weight. You're left with people like Fandango who are just stuck. Stuck in no man's land, stuck in a dead end, stuck with no opportunity to get out. Now, why does this happen, though? See, here's the key. And this is something that I don't think the WWE has been able to put their finger on just yet. We've talked previously on the show about how a lot of the WWE universe is casual viewers. There is so much wrestling programming that exists throughout a week that sometimes, or at least most times, I would suspect, the only thing they have time for consistently is 3 hours of Monday Night Raw. They're not watching SmackDown. They're not watching NXT. They're not watching Superstars or the main event. You're probably not venturing off into New Japan or Lucha Underground or TNA. They get 3 hours of Raw and that's it. Hardcore fans, they may watch more, but I'm talking about the majority. The mainstream audience probably just watches 3 hours of Monday Night Raw, and that's it. And what the WWE is failing to realize in that equation is that while they're developing talent down in NXT, they're not developing the audience with them. And that's their mistake. That's their misfire. It's not a mistake because you can't make people watch, but that's their misfire for not understanding what the problem is. They believe that when they pluck somebody out of NXT and they bring them up to the main roster, that people know who they are. And they don't have to do the work. Why? Because, well, they're on the network. People pay for the network. We got 1.5 million subscribers. We're doing well. 90% satisfaction rate. These people know who they are. Except they don't. And they believe that they're developing the audience down in NXT to follow talent as they make the transition. And that is not happening. And so as a result, they need to put resources behind this talent to make them matter. So that the universe, the WWE universe, can develop with the talent as they get to now know them in the WWE. Stop taking the shortcut. Because the shortcut isn't helping. It's not helping Apollo Crews. It's not helping Baron Corbin. It's not helping Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, who may not have come up through NXT, but are treated about as head-scratchingly as NXT talent is coming up, which is basically, well, they were somewhere, and we hope you know who they are. Because that's all you're going to get from us. The WWE, who is so big on pushing stories, telling stories, developing characters, has lost their way in that regard in favor of pushing product. They are much more focused with getting you to buy the network, to watch Camp WWE, to check out the movies, than they are in you having any sort of emotional investment or connection to the talent or the stories that revolve around them. That's why everything feels so empty, so surface level, because they're much more interested in telling you about everything else you should be paying attention to outside of the very thing that they have been selling since day one. And that is competition and personal issue settled inside four corners, three ropes, until a winner has been crowned. And that's their problem. Is the effort isn't being pushed into the talent and why they're important. It's everything else. It's like watching CNN, for example, where the main window, the news, means less than the ticker, the side scroll, all of that. And that's what the WWE is doing right now. Sure, somebody like Enzo and Big Cass may hit when they come up, but for every one of those that hit, you have talent that's not hitting at all. Then they lose confidence in it and say, well, I don't understand why. Because of you. So it doesn't matter that Sami Zayn's on the main roster. Sure, it's awesome and it's cool and I love watching Sami Zayn. But if you don't fix the machine that Sami Zayn is in, it's going to crush him like it did Bo Dallas or Neville. You have to fix the real problem, not just what you think is on the surface. Putting a fresh coat of paint on your house may make your house look nice right away, and you could say, oh, it looks like a new house. But if the foundation is crumbling, who gives a fuck about the paint? We'll talk about some more NXT talent coming up when we do Extreme Rules predictions. But think about it. And ask yourself this. Where's Apollo Crews been the last couple weeks? After he came up so heralded after WrestleMania. Do you know? Exactly. Alright, let's touch upon a couple of things that happened on Monday Night Raw. Then we can get into Extreme Rules. I brought up some things already that we saw, particularly Dana Brooke, which didn't really work out too well. Big Cass, look, they're high on this guy, and you could tell right away. And I will say, now with Enzo recovering from the concussion, Big Cass by himself lacks in the overall presentation. They're trying to get him there. They're working with him. Okay, so that's a positive sign. They just want to get this guy on TV as best they can. But the Enzo Amore half of the package really helps bring it all together. Because Big Cass by himself, while a work in progress, especially on the mic, does have the skills to get there. Got the look to get there, got the skills to get there. But you gotta help him. And help him in the right way. You want to talk about new era versus same old shit? Big Cass comes out and cuts a promo against the Dudley Boys and uses a Steve Urkel reference. Steve Urkel! You know when Steve Urkel was relevant? That is a dated reference if I've ever heard one. And to get it and put it in the mouth of a guy who's, early 20s? How old's Big Cass? But a fresh face on the roster and you stick that John Cena shit in his mouth? It doesn't sound like something he would say. So don't use it. Look, I'm all for getting him on TV, and even if he's going to squash Devon Dudley, just as a way to keep him in the public eye until Enzo gets back, so be it. But make it work. Sometimes you have to wonder, the writers, the creative that we like to throw out there, when's the last time they were out to sort of see the sun? Because if they're dropping Steve Urkel references in a promo in 2016, to say that their finger is not on the pulse of pop culture, that's an understatement. At the same time, we saw the debut of the Shining Stars, which, poor Primo and Epico, who the fuck did these guys piss off to get stuck with not one, but two bad gimmicks in a row? That is what we call a streak. First, Los Matadores, which was DOA. Nobody in the 21st century wants to watch two guys dress up like Mexican bullfighters when we know they're not Mexican bullfighters. So now what do? You send them back home to Puerto Rico and you have them come out as what? Travel ambassadors? Like, what is the gimmick here? And I realize you've been trying to build them up for weeks. One of the few gimmicks you have been trying to build up for weeks as far as an arrival is concerned. But you should have known weeks ago this thing's not working. Because once again, they arrive on the scene DOA. And why have them debut now? The week heading into Extreme Rules, the go-home show. First of all, this show should be committed to building into everything that's going to be on Extreme Rules. Everything. If it's going on Extreme Rules, it should have a segment. If it's not, cut it loose for right now. Because the only thing that's going to wind up happening with the Shining Stars is that Extreme Rules is going to happen, and we're going to forget that they even debuted. Next week would have been fine. Next week would have been a great time to debut them. Why? You're starting fresh. Slate is clean. Heading out of Extreme Rules, going somewhere else. But to debut them going into a card that then they're not going to be on? What's the point? And unless somehow you're getting Carlito signed again to round out this trilogy, create some sort of Puerto Rico vicious heel faction, you're going to have to send these guys away and repackage them again. You're going to be tied for Spider-Man with reboots. This is a disappointment. They're not bad guys. Personality-wise, they're not bad either. You should be able to do something with them. Why do you keep hitting them with this lame-ass shit? Sorry. Didn't know I was going to get that emotional about the Shining Stars. Anyway, look, the main event angle heading into Extreme Rules has been a disaster. And it's not AJ Styles' fault. He's also just put in a really hard position. But the Styles Reigns thing is horrible. First of all, after overexposing Roman Reigns for so long, now they're underexposing him to the point where he feels like he's not even a real part of the card right now. And then you've driven this angle into the ground. Because if it's not a 6-man match, it's a tag match, it's the club, it's the Usos, it's Reigns, it's Styles. We've seen these guys fight non-stop for like 3 weeks now. Yet by the time we get to Extreme Rules, who gives a shit? There's no specialness to it. And so you open the show and you announce you can have the club versus the Usos again. A match we just saw last week on SmackDown. Again. So that when we get anything at Extreme Rules, we feel like we've already seen it for a really long time. Just a disappointment. Look, overall, the build to Extreme Rules has not been strong. It's been pretty weak. The card feels very cobbled together. You have a women's contract signing at the end of the show. That's the main event angle. But you have Charlotte heading into Extreme Rules to be in a match with somebody who is not Sasha Banks. And the crowd will let you know that because they want Sasha and they keep chanting it at you. And I realize you're trying to save her for something down the line, probably heading into SummerSlam, but that's in fucking August. We're still in May, June, July, 4 months. We're supposed to have no Sasha Banks for 4 months? We're supposed to have Becky Lynch trapped in limbo for 4 months? Because you don't want to waste her? You don't want to overexpose her like you did with Roman Reigns? Learn from the mistakes and do something different. I have nothing against Natalya, but we've already been down this road, and Natalya was away for so long that the fact that she's thrown into the main event feels like it doesn't belong. Like, this isn't her match. This isn't her time. You're pushing Divas Revolution for however long. You had a triple threat match on WrestleMania that stole the show, and then you sideline the two women who were part of that with the champ. It doesn't make any sense. Kalisto and Rusev, that's somewhat interesting. But then you sacrifice a U.S. champ in a non-title match to Alberto Del Rio, and I throw up my hands and I say, what the fuck? You waste segments on the Golden Truth. And now Fandango and Tyler Breeze together? It's heartbreaking to watch that. Heartbreaking. Because it's awful. I don't know what the WWE is doing with these go-home shows going into pay-per-views, because now 2 months in a row, they have been some of the most lackluster programs they have put together in a while. And that's saying something, because they've had months of lackluster programs. And I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. I'm not trying to shit all over the product. I like watching it when it's good. The problem is, right now, Even though you gave us hope by putting all these fresh faces on the program, once again, same old shit. It's not the new era. It's same shit, different day. You want the epitome of how just off they are right now? Chris Jericho and Dean Ambrose have a pretty heated confrontation going on right now. Jericho busted up the plant. Ambrose ruined the jacket. There's personal issue there. They stole each other's talk shows. There's something there to build on. And while right now I'm not a huge Jericho fan because I just feel like it's not coming together, I can at least say that the building of their feud has been beautiful. You want to know why? First and foremost, there's been no matches between the two in between their pay-per-view showdowns. It's all been angle. So I don't have to watch Jericho and Ambrose fight each other 6 times in between the times that they're going to fight that are supposed to mean something. It's hands off. They may attack one another. There may be physical confrontation, but I don't feel like I'm watching the matches over and over and over and over and over again. So they got something good here. They're working all the right direction. And then they line up an asylum match for Extreme Rules. Now, you want to know what an asylum match is? It's the dumbest fucking idea I've heard of in a long time. It's a steel cage match where shit is hanging above the cage like a fire extinguisher and a kendo stick. And there's a straight jacket up there, I think, and a mop. And it is a concept straight out of the dark days of TNA Impact Wrestling. And this is supposed to be a big match for their pay-per-view. It's not a big match. It's sad. Look, if there's one thing that they're doing right that I can absolutely point to and put my finger on and say, look at that, do more of that, it is the rebuilding of the mid-card around the Intercontinental Championship. Why? Because they have 4 individuals who have made a real effort to show that title means something. Something that it hasn't meant in a really long time. And you have this intriguing turmoil between Cesaro and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens and the reigning champion, The Miz. This is one of the better book storylines happening right now because you have 4 people who don't like each other. Whether they're faces or they're heels, it doesn't matter. There's one person in this corner and they hate the shit out of the other 3. And each one of those individuals hate the other 3. And they all hate each other until it's a fatal 4-way of just hatred. Yet desire for the Intercontinental Championship, which is right smack in the middle of it. That's a good story. And it's simple. So you don't have to get too wild and crazy with it. You just say, these guys want the title. They hate the other people that are in their way. Have at it. And they have 4 individuals who are able to carry themselves in a manner that makes them credible contenders and challengers for the championship. Kevin Owens might be, bar none, the best thing they have going today. Period. On either side of the coin. And he makes everything around him better, makes the feuds that he's involved better, the matches that he's in better. And for a guy who's been so traveled around the industry, for him to really be hitting his stride now in the WWE, the biggest stage, that's awesome. And we're reaping the benefits of being able to see that. Cesaro is coming into his own, finally getting a chance. Sami Zayn is going to be a tremendous underdog babyface when all is said and done. And The Miz, so good as a heel. So you want to look at something they're doing right? That's something they're doing right. That's the best thing they got going on right now in the company. And I look forward to seeing how it comes together at Extreme Rules. So with that said, let's get into some Extreme Rules predictions. I'm going to start on the pre-show. Baron Corbin versus Dolph Ziggler in a no disqualification match on the pre-show. This is now the second pay-per-view in a row that this match has been scheduled on the pre-show. And it's unfortunate. Why? Because Baron Corbin deserves so much better than this. And plus, didn't we already see Baron Corbin defeat Dolph Ziggler on Monday Night Raw? So what do I need it again for? I'm taking Corbin in a win here because he needs it. There's actually someplace up to go with him. Dolph Ziggler is just a guy he's going to be in this spot forever. Unfortunately. I think he's a hell of a worker. Sells like crazy. I wish he was in a better spot. But the obvious choice got to be Baron Corbin. Has to be. If Dolph Ziggler wins on the pre-show, I'm just turning off the night. I'm not even watching the rest of the show. I'm serious. That's how invested I am that Baron Corbin's going to win. Why? Because nothing else makes any sense. So if I come on next week to do the breakdown, the post-show, and I go, I got nothing left to talk about, I didn't watch it, you know it's because Dolph Ziggler won. So I'm taking Corbin. Kalisto versus Rusev for the U.S. title. I mean, look, I think that the only way for them to build Kalisto in any way, especially since they haven't done anything with him, they don't let him talk, they don't really build him up as a character, the only way to really build some support for him is to take that title off him and have him chase Rusev for it. And so I see Kalisto getting uncrowned at Extreme Rules, and Rusev, who looks to be on the rise once again, seeing some sort of ascent with Lana in his corner, I see Rusev being the new United States champion by the end of Extreme Rules. The New Day versus the Vaudevillains for the Tag Team Championship. The New Day is extremely over. And they're going to do what it is that they're going to do. But I think the right choice right now is to put those belts on the Vaudevillains and have them win the titles at Extreme Rules. Why? Because you need to rebuild your tag team division. And with Enzo Amore still on the shelf and Big Cass not being a part of it, and the only other options you really have are the Golden Truth and the Dudley Boys who have been around for forever and the Shining Stars, you got to build up a tag team that's credible. And I think the only way to do that is to have the Vaudevillains have an impressive win to capture the belt and be the new champions. Why? That'll get some heat on them. They'll be hated. And you'll have a rival for the New Day for the foreseeable future. So I'm picking, in an upset, the Vaudevillains as your new tag team champions. Dean Ambrose versus Chris Jericho in this fucking idiotic asylum match. I gotta go with Ambrose. The crowd loves him. Everybody loves this guy. This guy does the craziest shit. He's authentic. He's organic. They get behind him and they love him. I realize that heel Jericho is awesome. But after watching Jericho sort of take the feud from AJ Styles, I don't know what him taking the feud over Ambrose does. There's still a ways to go for Ambrose towards the top of the card. Jericho is still towards the end of the career. Ambrose gotta have this win in his match. I got Ambrose at Extreme Rules. Fatal 4-Way for the Intercontinental Championship. The Miz versus Kevin Owens versus Cesaro versus Sami Zayn. Oh, this is such a tough one. As much is I want Kevin Owens to be the Intercontinental Champion. I think it'd be great. I think the real money is in Kevin Owens not being the Intercontinental Champion, continuing to feud with Shane McMahon, and using that as a way to catapult himself to the main event level. So, I'm not taking Owens. I think The Miz and Cesaro is where the feud is at. And I think Cesaro is eventually going to capture that Intercontinental belt. I just don't think it's going to be right now. I think Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, there's still more to that feud to build on. So I look for these four individuals to sort of go their separate ways and split up into pairings after Extreme Rules. I like The Miz to successfully defend the Intercontinental Championship here at Extreme Rules. I think that's the way to continue building value in the belt, is to keep it on someone for a while in competitive matches and have them continue to escape time and time again while continuing to be chased by credible contender after credible contender. I'm picking Mike the Miz Mizanin to walk away from Extreme Rules, still your Intercontinental Championship. Take that one to the bank. Charlotte versus Natalya in a submission match. Ric Flair is banned from ringside. I like Charlotte in this one. I know Rick is banned from ringside. I know it's a submission match, but I'm still looking at some type of swerve. Still some type of just real disaster to happen on Natalya's end for Charlotte to still somehow cheat her way to victory and retain the women's champion. So I don't look for Natalya to take this. I think it's Charlotte. I think it's going to be some kind of schmaz or whatever, and Charlotte will continue to sit atop the women's division until probably August, when finally we might get a taste of Sasha Banks. I believe there's been a Texas Tornado match also added to the card, which will have Gallows and Anderson versus the Usos. I think you got to go with Gallows and Anderson. They're still new, they're still fresh, and you got to make them mean something. And the only way to do that is to take out the Usos. So Gallows and Anderson, it'll be a competitive match. Hopefully it'll be a good match, but they need that bump as they come out of Extreme Rules. And then we go to the main event. Roman Reigns versus AJ Styles in an Extreme Rules match. I know that they're still building Roman Reigns up. I know that they're still hoping that he's going to be the guy. And we know that John Cena's coming back in 2 weeks on Memorial Day, and they're probably lining something up, Cena versus Reigns. I don't know what the future holds for AJ Styles. I don't know what the future holds for quote-unquote the club. I don't know when Finn Balor is going to be coming up and how he's going to be positioned in all of this. So unfortunately, as much they put into Roman Reigns heading into WrestleMania, I cannot possibly see them taking the strap off of him just 2 months removed. So I think you're going to get Roman Reigns retaining the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at Extreme Rules. But don't be surprised if AJ Styles comes away looking much stronger. Same thing that happened at Payback. And really fully establishing himself as a player on the main event level of the company. And we'll see where that leads then through the summer. So those are my predictions for Extreme Rules. We'll be back next week to sort of break down how the card went and see how my predictions checked out and see how the card ultimately came together. With that said, I'm going to send you on your way and give you the go-home plugs right now as we head into the weekend and prepare for Extreme Rules. So make sure you hit up all the social media accounts. I'm going to line them up for you, knock them all down. Over on Twitter, at JTW Podcast. That's the official Twitter handle of Just the Worst Podcast. So every show, every episode, as we put them up, you'll be notified as long as you follow Twitter. So at JTW Podcast, make sure you follow that account. Also follow at Tis Infamous. That's the official handle of the mothership. This is Infamous. We got awesome videos, awesome movie reviews coming up. Got some cool interviews coming up for Ninja Turtles 2. So check some of that up, as well as the podcast will always go up on YouTube form as well. And all that will be notified to you through the This Is Infamous account, so at Tis Infamous. Make sure you follow that one as well. And you follow me at Infamous Kid, Kidd, 2 Ds at the end for Infamous Kid, for all my random ramblings and musings. My stream of consciousness, everything that pours out of my face goes right onto my Twitter, so you follow that, and hopefully you'll get, well, at least an intriguing look into the mind of me. Over on Facebook, 3 pages for you to like. Facebook.com/JustTheWorstPodcast, Facebook.com/TisInfamous, and Facebook.com/BillyTheKid. Work through those awful Facebook algorithms, but lots of good stuff going up there. Content, notifications, discussions, engagement. Go over, like those pages, and you get a lot out of it as long as you keep tabs on them. Podcast can be found at SoundCloud.com. That's SoundCloud.com/JustTheWorstPodcast, or hit up your tablet, hit up your phone, and get the SoundCloud app. This way, with your subscription to Just the Worst Podcast, you can get every show, every episode in the palm of your hands, or 2 hands if you got a sizable tablet. But either way, you can take the shows and every episode on the go. So in your bed, in your car, on the toilet, wherever you want to listen to me talk, whatever, you can get it on the SoundCloud app. So SoundCloud app for your phone or tablet. And if you're using the web, SoundCloud.com/JustTheWorstPodcast. You can find me every single day and regularly at JoeBlow.com. This is Infamous, as well as here at Just the Worst Podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in, streaming, downloading, however you listen. Thank you for getting all the way to the end of the show, and I look forward to being back here next week to talk Extreme Rules for you. So we'll see how it goes through the weekend. This has been Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast, episode number 36. I have been your host, Billy Donnelly. Make sure you hit those ropes hard and kick out before the count of 3, because, well, them's be the rules. Have yourself a pleasant, immediate future. I'm out for now. Peace. Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast, episode number 36, has been a presentation of Just the Worst Podcast Media